Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Makakradash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Millstone who rule well. Peace, love, and salutations to the hopeful elect. This is your brother Dawadah from the Men of Valor campaign in Greenwood, South Carolina. Coming back with another video on sincerity and in truth, and Lord willing, it can be edifying. And about to drop some heavy information. All right, very prophetic. All right, we're definitely in those times of Yahweh Shah bringing his prophecies to pass. All right, and one of the main prophecies that need to be fulfilled before the destruction is the mandatory implementation of the M.O.T.B, which we believe through the Spirit is the micro C-hip. All right, and the article I'm about to show you in a conversation I had with ChatGPT is going to highlight how this is a precursor, for setting up an M.O.T.B. All right, setting up the M.O.T.B, the money infrastructure behind it, the buying and the selling, because they have to replace the physical money with digital currency. And we've just been, waiting to see how they're going to go about doing that. So JP Morgan has pretty much started a more privatized route. And, ChatGPT is going to help me vocalize how they can merge it with the CBDCs that the actual, countries are developing, and how the big banks are going to be involved. All right, so Lord willing, this is edifying, man. It's a lot of information, so bear with me. But let's get right into this. JP Morgan launches dollar deposit token on Coinbase's base network. JP Morgan Chase & Co., the world's biggest bank by market capitalization, has began deploying a token representing deposits held at the bank called JPM Coin. According to a Wednesday Bloomberg report, JP Morgan's institutional clients now have access to the JP Morgan coin. The bank's blockchain division co-led Naveen Mallela told Bloomberg that the token represents U.S. dollar deposits at the bank and allows users to send and receive money on the blockchain created by U.S. crypto exchange Coinbase called Base, a platform endorsed by the bank. In mid-June, Mallela announced that a fixed number of JPMD tokens would be transferred to Coinbase on Base in the following days. The transfer was part of the pilot phase that was followed by allowing Coinbase institutional clients to access the bank's deposit tokens. JP Morgan Coin enables instant 24/7 payment processing, which is significantly, all right, this is important, which is significantly faster than the typical time seen in U.S. banking system. The news follows the week's announcement by JP Morgan in Singapore multinational banking group DBS that they are developing a blockchain-based tokenization framework to enable on-chain transfers between their deposit token ecosystems. And I know that sounds like a lot, but what they're doing is they're creating digital versions of, basically the US dollar within it. So basically, because I know it sounds tricky, but they've created these coins that represent the amount of money basically within their account. So it's not based on money in other accounts right now. It's just based on money that's within, that they have access to, which is major because JP Morgan is the largest bank by market capitalization. Okay. So let's continue on. It says, JP Morgan has not responded to Cointelegraph's inquiry by publication. It's not a stable coin. All right, this is important. JP Morgan coin is a so-called deposit token, meaning it represents a direct claim on a bank deposit and is therefore a regulated liability of the issuing bank. This is the primary distinction between this type of token and traditional stable coins, which are issued by a private entity and backed by assets to maintain their value. Much like the broader U.S. financial industry, JP Morgan appears to be doubling down on its commitment to tokenization and blockchain technology. Why? Because everything is moving toward the replacement of the dollar with digital currencies, and that those digital currencies will be tied to a digital ID, which will be tied to your M.O.T.B. CHIP. Okay, see how it's all coming together? All right, it says, at the end of October, JP Morgan's private bank and asset manager divisions initiated the first transaction on the forthcoming Connexes Fund Flow. It's like a Fund Flow Fund. That's so weird to say. Tokenization platform. JP Morgan bets on crypto. The company also showed enthusiasm toward the broader crypto ecosystem. And that's very interesting because the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, they got his ass on record some years back, basically saying that crypto, crypto ain't hitting on shit. Meanwhile, they're going and buying all the crypto. They're actually investing in. See, they're doing these things and they're trying to leave you people holding, regular ass US dollars, man. All right, that are going to go obsolete at some point. If they are setting up these different banking currencies and CBDCs and stable coins, if people own those, it's going to be an easier transition once they somehow make the dollar obsolete. We don't know exactly how they're going to do that, but they're already thinking of an alternative. All right. It says, in late October, JP Morgan was reported to be planning to let clients use Bitcoin and Ether as collateral for loans. In mid-January, JP Morgan suggested that a Solana ETF would attract $3 billion to $6 billion, while an XRP ETF would garner $4 billion to $8 billion in new investments. The bank was also recently reported to be developing plans to offer cryptocurrency trading services. Also in October, JP Morgan informed its financial advisors that all clients will be able to invest in cryptocurrency funds. Until then, the advisors were restricted to offering such products to high net worth investors with over 1.5 million in assets with aggressive risk profile. So, they're pushing toward a digital system, man. As we've been saying, I know we sound like a broken record, but they're actively doing it. And see, none of these other camps are even warning their congregations of what's coming. Why? Because they're protecting the claim that the M.O.T.B. is not the CHIP. Some say it's spiritual, some say it's sleeping with white women, some say it's an embargo. And we say through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemel Shai, starting with the elders and apostles of Great Millstone to the men on down, that the M.O.T.B. is the CHIP. It's the micro C hook. And they're moving, setting up the money to be able to be in harmony with this new system that they're about to bring about. All right, so I asked ChatGPT basically what it was, and we can read through this real quick, and then we'll get some scripture. It says, I said, tell me about JP Morgan's new dollar deposit token. It says, here's a breakdown of JP Morgan's Chase & Co.'s new deposit token, branded as JPM coin or JPMD in this context, what it is, how it works, why it matters, and what the risks are. So read the article, but now it's going to give some more insight. What is it? Or what it is? JP Morgan has rolled out a token that represents U.S. dollar deposits held at the bank. So if you have money deposited at there in JP Morgan Chase and Chase Bank, all right, which, they got Chase banks everywhere, then they've created a coin that represents every dollar in those banks, all right, in their accounts. Slovakia. It's being issued to institutional clients for now rather than retail investors. All right, so, bigger companies, they're getting in on it first. The token runs on blockchain, specifically the base L2 chain affiliated with Coinbase Global Incorporated, allowing for 24/7 near instant settlement. Unlike a typical stablecoin, this is a bank deposit token, sometimes called a tokenization deposit, meaning it's not simply a company issuing tokens backed by reserves, but a regulated bank issuing digital claim on deposits. So instead of it's just like, they're creating this and you can go and buy it, the coins represent the already existing money in the banks, if that makes sense. Why it matters: speed and efficiency. Transactions with this token can settle in seconds, regardless of business hours. This is a big upgrade over normal bank wires, which can take hours or days and are often limited by banking hours. Integration with banking system. Because the token is issued by a bank, it potentially benefits from the legal and regulatory framework banks operate under. Example, deposit insurance, auditing. That gives it credibility compared to many crypto tokens. Blockchain and banking bridge. This marks a step toward bridging to traditional finance banks with crypto blockchain infrastructure. It could become foundational for institutions on chain finance, tokenized assets, programmable money, and real-time settlement. Competitive move. With fintech and crypto firms growing, banks need to adapt. JP Morgan rolling this out shows the major banks see the value in digital asset infrastructure and don't want to be left behind. Here are the risks and limitations. Currently limited access. At present, this token is only for institutional clients. It's not publicly tradable among retail or just anyone. Interoperability and adoption. While the token works on the base blockchain, the broader ecosystem, other banks, other tokens, chains still need integration. If every institution uses its own token on a different chain, you risk fragmentation, but they're going to figure this out. Regulatory and accounting treatment. Even though the token has banking backing, regulators still need to clarify how tokenized bank deposits will be treated under existing laws. Banks will need to ensure compliance, which may slow expansion. Not exactly like a typical stablecoin. For example, issuing tokens and redeeming them must reconcile with bank ledger programs. Some of the advantages of crypto, public market, open access, speculative liquidity, may not apply here. What to watch going forward? Whether JP Morgan opens their token to a wider set of clients and eventually to retail, which I believe through the spirit they will do. How other banks respond. If widespread adoption takes off, tokenized bank deposits could become major infrastructure. How regulation evolves. The U.S. laws around stablecoins, tokenized deposits, banking digital assets, how the token interacts with other tokenized assets, funds, securities, and whether it becomes a backbone for on-chain cash for institutional flows. So they're setting a framework in the privatized market. You have the banks, the central banks that are moving for their CBDCs, but you also have the private banks that are pushing for this as well. All getting ready to come to a point, man. All right, and it's happening quick. And the average person don't know what the hell's going on. All right, hearing about these coins, this is my first time hearing about it as well because they just announced it. But you're going to hear more about it. You're going to hear these other major banks, Citigroup, Bank of America, these other groups will begin stepping into this arena as well. So I asked it then. It says, how can this eventually replace the dollar and be integrated into a digital ID system and eventually a micro C-HIP? Said this is a very deep and perceptive question because what JP Morgan and central banks globally are doing right now with tokenized deposits and CBDC pilots does quietly build the rails for programmable digital money systems that could, in theory, merge with digital identity and later biometric or implant technology. So they're doing it quietly. That's why I want to get this scripture real quick. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. Lest Satan should gain an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So they're doing it quietly. You know, they do it in secret. Like the scriptures say, they say, who seeth us and who knoweth us. Let's grab that. So they're announcing it, but the average person isn't looking into this, man. You know, but us paying attention to prophecy, staying on our watchtower, we're paying attention to these different things. Let's see. Yep. Isaiah chapter 29 and verse 15. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark. And they say, who seeth us and who knoweth us? So, you know, who can see what we're doing? Who can, you know, who can put two and two together that we're getting ready to merge this with C-hips? All right, because I believe this is where they're going with it. All roads, like brother's been doing, videos on all roads lead to the M.O.T.B, man. You know, and I'll probably add, you know, make this my title of my video, and then add the JP Morgan coin, you know, JPM coin. So they say, who seeth us and who knoweth us? However, in Amos, the 3rd chapter, the Lord said that surely he will do nothing, but he revealeth his secrets unto his servants, the prophets. So the Lord has put a spirit on his men to be able to see this, have the foresight, and be able to call it out before in live time. That's what I'm doing this video for now. You know, and this is why eventually they're going to have to remove us off the internet, because the spirit is rested upon us to be on our watch. And whatever the Lord's will is, even on the left-hand side with these devils, we're bringing it out. We're warning the sheep, you know, because they try to get people with these big words, and, you know, people, the average person not looking anything up, you know, but hey, you know, we're using, you know, their own technology against them for better understanding. You know, I looked at the article. I said, okay, what's this JP Morgan coin? And I asked ChatGPT. And now I'm asking it, if you ask it the right questions, you know, it'll peel back those layers. So it says, let's break it down clearly and neutrally so you understand how it could happen, why it's being pursued, and where the ethical tensions lies. It says, from deposit token to digital dollar. JP Morgan's token isn't a new currency. It's a tokenized claim on existing US dollar deposits. But here's the key evolution paths. Phase 1, tokenized bank money. Each major bank issues its own digital version of dollars, like JPMD. Transactions occur instantly on blockchain rails, still private banking money, but interoperable and programmable. Phase 2, industry standardization. Banks and regulators agree on a common interoperable standard for banking for digital bank tokens. Eventually, these tokens can move seamlessly between banks and payment systems. So this is where, once these other banks get on board, this is where it's going to lead to. They're going to be able to transfer, just how you can transfer money from one bank to another. They're going to set up the tokens. All right, you got this, you know, you got the JP Morgan coin or dollar, and then you're going to have the Bank of America dollar, because these banks aren't going anywhere, you know, and they're all going to ultimately filter into a CBDC, you know, which is going to be connected to a global currency, man. You know, so they're just breaking it down by the layers. Phase 3, it says federal integration or CBDC hybrid. The Federal Reserve could introduce a wholesale CBDC, a central bank digital currency, to connect all commercial bank tokens. This becomes digital USD infrastructure, effectively the dollar on chain. So JP Morgan system is like a beta version of the infrastructure a digital dollar could run on. Digital dollar or digital identity integration for programmable digital money to function. Identity verification is essential. Why? AML or KYC, anti-money laundering, and know your customer compliance, preventing fraud, ensuring each wallet or token represents a real verified person or identity. That's where your ID is going to come from. It's going to avoid fraud. You're not going to be able to have money that's not yours, because you're going to be verified and connected to the system. You know, they're going to say it's in the name of safety, you know, and anti-fraud. enabling smart permissions, government aid, tax rebates, or spending restrictions. Thus, a digital ID system verified at the federal or global level would eventually link to your financial wallet. Ooh, here we go. Here we go. It says already being tested in the EU, digital identity wallets tied to the European digital euro. China, see, America can't be behind. So they're remember what Trump said, that America's going to be the cryptocurrency capital of the world. But if you have other nations and other systems already setting this up, that means America's behind. So they have to accelerate this, which means what? We're going to feel a more drastic shift here. You got the digital yuan integrated with citizen identity databases. In the U.S., you got concepts like FedNow, which I actually did a video on FedNow maybe like a year ago. Tokenized deposits and digital ID pilots by DHS and NIST point in this direction. In the U.S., it might begin benignly a federated digital wallet linked to your driver's license, passport, and tax record for convenience. Ooh, for convenience. Man, micro C up or biometric integration. Now, this is speculative, but technologically feasible. All right, so they're saying, all right, this is a reach, but that's the reach that the Lord is going to make them do. That's the end game of all of this. But Chad is saying, but technologically feasible and already demonstrated in some forms. Micro C-HIP payments. Sweden and the Netherlands have seen voluntary micro C-HIP implants used for payments, building, access, or medical records. Biometric wallets. Facial recognition and fingerprint authentication for payments are early steps toward bodily integration. Next step. Linking digital identity and digital wallet and health biometric data in one embedded device, the C-HIP or wearable. This is the M.O.T.B. Brothers have been saying this through the spirit. They're going to link your money. They're going to link your health. They're going to link your identification to this micro C-HIP, man. And you're not going to be able to buy or sell, save you have it. This is it. And you got guys that really were out here saying that the M.O.T.B wasn't the CHIP, that it was spiritual, that was something else. How do you feel right now? Bet you feel silly as hell. But our apostles and elders, they saw it through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Al-Shah. They saw it from the jump, man. It says, if the system becomes globalized, which it will, digital money could be controlled via your verified ID and hardware, making every transaction traceable and programmable. Why this is both powerful and dangerous. Potential benefits. Near instant payments. Drastically reduced fraud. Seamless taxation and social benefits. Earlier cross-border commerce. Potential risks. Total surveillance. Every transaction tied to your ID and location. See, and this is where this devil wants to heap to himself all nation and gather unto himself all people. Because you're going to be totally surveilled. They're going to know where every piece of your money is going. Every transaction, every dollar earned, every dollar spent will be tracked. See, right now you have physical money and they can't track that. So you can give a stripper $1, you can give a homeless person $1. They don't know that. The government won't know. But under this new system, they're going to know everything at any given time. And they have AI to be able to oversight it. So you don't need a big office building full of people tracking it. Now you have AI. That's why they're building these Hyperion, these different data centers that's going to be able to keep up with all of this. It says programmability. Money could expire, be restricted, or frozen based on behavior. That's where you get your social credit as the next point. Social credit potential. Spending privileges linked to trust scores or compliance. Loss of anonymity. Cash disappears entirely. Here's the death of physical cash. This is where everything is leading to, man. This is the precursor for that. So we know we don't have long. The fifth point, where JP Morgan fits in the big picture. JPM isn't creating this system alone, but they're testing the private sector rails that the Fed and BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, will use. The deposit token lets JPM test programmable settlements under existing law without needing Congress to approve a CBDC yet. So they have a loophole. Once the rails are proven, the government could adapt similar infrastructure and integrate it with digital ID, potentially under the guise of modernization or anti-fraud measures. Man, so it's saying, a timeline projection. Yeah, let's see what they say. I'll say yes. Let's see where. And then we'll get some scriptures. Man, we're in those times, man. We're not going back. We're not going back. And it says, man, let's get into this a little bit. Which I don't think we have, until because they have an agenda, 2030. But the Lord is speeding up the times for the elect's sake. Because if not, there shall no flesh be left to be saved. No flesh will be saved. So the Lord has to shorten this. It says, got you. Here's a realistic, no-fluff roadmap for how tokenized deposits, digital ID, optional, C-HIP wearable could unfold. It is a projection, not destiny, but it follows where the rails are already pointing. So it's saying for 2025 and 2026, rails go live quietly, which that's what they're doing. They've announced this. This probably won't make major news. I got this from zerohedge.com. I didn't see anything on it on Twitter or anything like that. So in a sense, they are doing this quietly because the world is distracted. What happens? Big banks expand tokenized deposits. JP Morgan, Citi, Bank of America. I said this through the Spirit. For bank-to-bank wholesale instant settlement, 24/7 Treasury moves on-chain collateral. Interbank interoperability pilot scale. Bank-to-bank token swaps, tokenized T-bills, CP as collateral. FedNow, adoption grows. Private blockchain bridge to FedNow for finality. Digital ID pilot ramp. DMV passport, mobile ID wallets, IRS login, and state IDs converge through standards. And this is where it's leading. Who's driving? Banks and custodians, Fed payment policy, Treasury, OFAC compliance, NIST ID standards, and Visa and MasterCard token rails. What it means, the pipes for programmable dollars get proven in the background. Business use first, low political heat. So the businesses have adapted this first. All right, so it says, and again, ignore the, as you can see, the Lord is going to speed all of this up. All right. So it's saying 2027, 2028, retail on ramps without saying CBDC. Yeah, they're going to deceive people. They're not going to openly say that. They're going to sweeten the pot. But I perceive through the Spirit, they're going to do this a lot faster than the timeline that Chad is trying to say. It says wholesale digital dollar backbone. And then it says digital ID ties the room together. And man, we could see all of this next year, in 2026, I believe, through the Spirit, the way things are moving. Programmability moves front stage. Wearables implants are voluntary, and then the fork in the road policy choice, which we know is the hour of temptation. But we don't have, it ain't going to be in 2035. Let me just tell you that right now through the Spirit. So nonetheless, man, great information. Tawadi Halbashim Shah for giving us the eyes to see and the ears to hear of what's going down, man. So let's go ahead and get what we all know and love, because this was already prophesied through the Spirit. All right. Thousands of years before it actually went down, man. All right, over 2,000 years, man. This is Revelation chapter 13. And let's see. Start at verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, the infrastructure of this system, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So eventually it's going to get to, if you don't comply with this, you're an enemy of the state, and you're liable to be put to death. Because this is where they're going with it. Yeah, they might sweeten the pot. They might have incentives for you to join it. But eventually it's going to be either you get down with this system or you don't get to live. That's how diabolical these devils are. All right. But the Lord is going to protect us. Yahushua told us, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of temptation that shall come upon the whole world to try them to dwell upon the earth. So this is a trial. This is the ultimate trial of our faith. All right. Because in Revelation, the 20th chapter, John the Revelator saw men that were beheaded for not receiving the M.O.T.B. So that's how real we know it is, man. It says, verse 16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And that mark is charagma. All right. And something implanted. It's going to be implanted under the skin. And what's the point of it? And where it ties it all together? Verse 16 or verse 17, that no man might buy or sell. All right. That's where they're tying the money and shit together. That no man might buy or sell, which means the dollar will be done. Okay. The dollar will be your physical money will be done away with. It says then that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Okay. This is where this leading. Absolutely. And the punishment for receiving the M.O.T.B. is in this chapter right here. Let's go ahead and bring it out and we'll close out. Revelation chapter 14 and verse 9, it says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So if you receive that, all right, no excuses. You've been warned. If you receive that, you will be tormented. You will be nuked. All right. You're going to be left here and melted and tormented before the face of the holy angels and the Lamb, which is Yahushua. So even unto death, do not accept this, the sea hip, man. All right. You cannot repent from it. You will be destroyed. So, man, Lord willing, this is edifying. This is major. All right, they're doing it. Again, JP Morgan launches dollar deposit token on Coinbase's base network. Okay. So, Lord willing, this is edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushua, Bahashim, Rakakradash, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace, love, and salutations to the hopeful elect. Till next time, Shalom.